Investing in real estate will allow you to stranglehold your boss into giving you whatever terms you want to work. Don't take my word for it. Remember, I was laid off from 2020 and COVID. Take today's guest, my guest today, who did absolutely just that. Incredible story. Y'all, my name is Jay Hems, and if you're new here, if this is your first time discovering the W2 Capitalists, we as the W2 Capitalists are a resource for married men and women to help you build multiple streams of income through real estate investing so that you can be more present both mentally and physically with your spouse and your children and help put you on a path toward building generational wealth. Personally, I want to be the guy that helps you remove the anxiety and stress that comes with financially providing for your family. Today's episode is a very special one. It's with Adam Zock. He is one of my VPs in the Mastermind. He leads the single family buy and hold call, and dude is getting after it. I'm always inspired every time I talk to him, and I get to talk to him more than just when we record podcasts. I am extremely lucky because I have him in my circle. Let's just bring him in. Adam, welcome to the show.
Well, glad to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Man, so last time you were here, we recorded a few weeks before the show was publicized on or published on October the 27th. Here we are recording December 22nd. You got a bit of a news update you want to share with us about W2 and kind of where your world's at right now. So tell us kind of what's going on, man.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough, even amidst COVID and all of this, to be able to put in my notice at work.
Nice.
And
for those of you who are investing so that you can exit the W2 world, you're listening to two guys right now who have been able to do that. It doesn't have to be your passion. A lot of people that they just want to build their wealth. But if you want to invest so that you can leave your W2, just like Cindy Byler, Cindy was on the podcast a couple weeks ago. She's the exact same thing. So, Adam, how did you do this? How did you, and how was it talking to your boss? How was it talking to your boss about putting the notice in?
Sure. I mean, it started with a plan, a 10-year plan. That was always the goal. Like, I got coached pretty early to make sure that I'm still giving work the better end of the deal and to not just mail it in until they essentially fire you and let you go. And I thought that was great advice just from an integrity standpoint. And I know some people hate work so much that they're like, I owe them nothing. And, this isn't a great relationship, but luckily I had a pretty good relationship. And so when I did put in the notice and talk with the boss, it was, complete surprise. And then at not much surprise other than that, they offered, say, what would it take for you to go part-time? In which case then you're kind of at some negotiation standpoint. So that's where we're currently at, where it's, now I have the option because it is good terms. If they say, hey, what would it look like if you worked 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week? And then that's kind of the current situation where told them initially no. And now if it's like, well, if either the price is right or it fits into the flexibility, maybe taking that opportunity. But I think the biggest thing was starting with a plan, like, this is going to be 2029. And here it is 2020, of when this is going to happen.
Well, I think, you're on to something with the setyourrent.com that you have going on there. And every time you and I talk, every time you come in the mastermind call, you're like, well, I got another one we're about to close on is scheduled closings, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I feel like he's now just rubbing it right in the wound, salt in the wound kind of thing. I do have a closing today, by the way. That's where I'm going after this.
Fantastic.
We're selling one. We're not buying anything, but it's my first time to be an actual seller where we're doing forced owner financing.
Nice.
So I've learned a lot, and I imagine the next several months I'll be learning even more.
Yeah. Well, and I know when people, where I could maybe say, hey, I'm doing a closing every now and then when you come in, like, hey, I closed a 42 unit, I'm like, oh, well, that's like 42 of mine, right? And so you kind of swing more than the singles that I try to hit out over here.
Yeah, but those are so few and far between. I told somebody the other day that, on we're about to sell our 42 unit. I think it's under contract. It's going through due diligence. Matter of fact, our closing date was supposed to be a few weeks ago, but then we had this hurricane that came in late in the season, did some damage, and now the insurance and bank are trying to figure out, do we want to fix it before we make the trade or whatever. So luckily I have some really, really good partners on that, and I'm not involved in that process at all. I'm just kind of waiting for them to tell me when to show up. I kind of hope it's next year from a tax perspective, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, and those are few and far between. And I've talked about this in the mastermind a little bit, how I'm going to transition. I keep saying transition. I don't mean transition. Multifamily is never going to go away, because I mean, what we're about to close on, it's going to be really good. I mean, I'll make 2 years salary and it's one transaction. So it's almost like, why would you stop doing that? But deals are so few and far between now. It's like, I was having this conversation. I can't remember who I was having this conversation with, but it was one of those things where either I have really improved my circle to where everybody in my circle is now as a syndicator or some sort of investor, or it's investing has just become so popular that everybody and their brother's a syndicator, and I'm like, why are you guys buying this? What do you know that I don't know? Because I see transactions that I think happen, at least people are boasting about them happening, and I know somewhat of, depending on the deal, how much they're getting them for, what they're paying for these properties. I'm like, I don't know. How are you guys going to make money? It's to me right now, multifamily is very speculative. So to land this plane, what I'm trying to say is next year or 2021, my priority is going to be on single family again, single family, small multifamily. So am I cutting out?
And I think everyone, it happened there just for a second, but I think you're back now.
Okay.
You're good to go. One thing I might add onto the, if I could, back on the boss thing, because I don't know that I did that due diligence enough or gave it enough, was I think I had a lot of fear of putting or telling them. Like I held off, and I've been thinking about doing it for years. And until you get, excuse me, to a certain point where you're like at a certain percent of your income, do you really want to like show your cards? Because I feel like if I had told them, hey, I'm going part-time, I feel like you just get a new stamp on your back being like, well, short timer here, let's just drive them into the ground. And I don't know if that was the case, but I wanted to be pretty clear that when I walked in there, it wasn't like hey, it's I'm thinking about this. It's like, hey, this happened and I'm committed.
This happened overnight, by the way, Mr. Boss. If you didn't know this or not, I'm independently wealthy. I no longer need your paycheck. So yeah. No, I know you didn't. I imagine, I don't know how the conversation went, but I imagine you didn't deliver it like that. It's funny. And I hear what you're saying, and advice to anybody and everybody out there. My experience is, if your boss doesn't know, your boss doesn't need to know. I heard a story earlier today, and I was like, you know what? Bosses are humans too. Like, I almost started empathizing with the boss about, it was something, again, I can't remember who I was talking to, but basically it was like, they don't want to tell their boss because they're afraid how their boss is going to react. I was like, yeah, absolutely don't tell them. Now, if you're interviewing for a new position or a new company with a new company, then straight up front during the interview process, tell them this is what you do on the side. So you can no longer be fearful that there's no target on your back, so to speak. And, the person I was talking to while we were talking, and I was like, you know what? Here's one thing that I haven't really thought about, that I may lean on and a lot of people are probably going to hate me for this, but by the way, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but our lawn guy shows up to cut the grass right now. Like, I don't know what he's doing here. It's dead. Anyway, he just went by the window. But it's one of those things where I'm like, most bosses are so tied up in their world, building their business, that they can't fathom that their employee is an expert in anything else other than what they pay them to do. So a lot of bosses are shocked, right? To, oh shit, Adam knows how to do this. Adam knows how to invest in real estate. Adam knows how to put people together, from people who can't buy versus people who have money that want to lend on it. It's and they're just like blown away. And I think the initial reaction for most bosses is, this son of a gun's been moonlighting on me and not doing his job. Anyway, they're upset. Anyway, I can talk about that for hours. Let's not do that today.
Anywhere you want to go.
We do have some questions, man, and from the community. So this isn't Ask Me Anything and episode. I did not say that when I hit record and we were talking. I'm going to go back and do the intros and the outros and all that afterwards. So, but we do have some questions from the community. And if you can find that community at w2capitalist.com/community. And the first one kind of goes along with you leaving your W-2. And this is a question from John Lim. I hope I'm saying your last name right, John. What is your why?
That's a really good question. And I wish that I had like, hey, it's faith, it's family, it's whatever. The best that I could describe it is growth. And it is my personal opinion that, so although, faith and family are extremely important to me, I relate it back to the story of the talents where like I've been given so much that it is my responsibility to do something with it, whether that's contribution, whether that's, making the world a better place. And so for me, I'm always looking to do something more. And I feel like when I stop doing that, that's when I start doing a disservice to myself and my family and everyone around me. And so right now I am in fact addicted to growth, where I can't just kind of stay steady, which is, probably a vice in and of itself. But for me, it is making sure that whatever area of life that I'm growing right now. And if that turns into something else in the future, which I'm sure it may, a year or 5 years from now, right now, it's just making sure that every area that I'm doing, I'm looking to do better.
Yeah. So sorry, I just got a text. It distracted me and I meant to turn that off. Being addicted to growth. I know what you're talking about because I'm seeing some of that in the mastermind right now. We're getting like one new member a week and it's been pretty exciting. I'm like, hell yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep growing this. But are you talking more about personal growth, financial growth? Like what are you growing toward? I guess I should say.
So for me, it breaks down into the different areas of my life where if I'm looking to become a better practicing Catholic, what does growth look like? If that's better prayer, if that's going to confession once a week, if it's for family, is it, okay, making sure that my wife's love tank is an 8 or higher, if I'm using the engineering score, or if it's making sure that I have my, whether it's 2 hours dedicated every day with my family as kind of the standard. And then for business, is it the number of people that we've created homeowners, and where it's health, there's maybe some key performance indicators with, cholesterol and blood tests and how fast I can run a 5K. And so for me, it's kind of like, okay, here's the standard of where we're starting 2020. And for me, there's maybe a couple things that I want to maintain or make sure they don't drop below a certain level, but otherwise it's every area of my life. I kind of have a measure of where I want to continue to grow. And if I'm not doing that, I feel like I'm falling short. And whether that's true or not, that's how I view it.
How do you juggle all that though? How do you juggle those 5 different areas? Because I was listening to Matthew McConaughey's new book, Green Light, and he talks about how he's got these different areas in his life, and he made this statement of because he's a family guy, he's got a wife, several kids, several. I think he has 2 or 3. But he talks about making, at one point in time, he realized, he looked up and he said, all right, I've been making the deposits in the business world of McConaughey, but not on the family side of McConaughey, and delivering it the way only he can deliver it. And so he, at that point, he was running like a 4 or 5 different companies that all had to do with promoting his brand. And he called his I don't know, his CEO or whoever it was, and said, all right, we're shutting down. And he started naming off of a couple of businesses. It was like, I'm only going to focus on acting. I'm not going to do the publishing. I'm not doing the producing, all this stuff. And he started shutting these things down because he realized he was not making the deposits in the family side. And that really spoke to me because I'm this, I don't know what level he was at, but it really resonated with me where I'm like, yeah, I have been making huge deposits in the investing and running the business side of the world, not so much on the family side, right? So how do you keep those? And this is a question for me. So I want to know, how do you keep those, juggling those different balls so that one of them's less likely to be dropped?
Sure. I again, I wish I had a great answer. To me,
Yeah,
it's more in the daily habits that
yeah,
we enact. And for me, it's waking up early. It's making sure that I give my wife a break since we have young kids. Like the sleep, as much
yeah.
as people can kind of roll their eyes or just say, "Oh yeah, it's just sleep," but like how much that can wreak havoc on someone's life when you don't have it. How like everything else can kind of crumble down, and then making sure that I, you know, hitting the every day. But I know a lot of people say time. It's tough. I,
Okay, so we had some technical difficulties. I'm going to ask Adam the question again. Um, damn, what was the question? Oh, how do you? It's got me all thrown off. Because you were answering it so beautifully, and I was really tuned into what you're saying, and then everything froze up. But the question was, how do you juggle all those different things, right? And
sure.
make sure that you're, and I'll add to this. I think this again was a McConaughey reference, but how do you push one ball down the field, come back and pick up the other balls and take them down the field so that you're not losing or leaving any of those behind?
I equate that to maybe only having three hats the last 3 years. I was
Okay.
either an engineer, I was a family man, or I was in real estate. And I really didn't do anything else except for those three. So I think I sacrificed a lot on like the TV or friends, which sometimes can get you a little bit in a mental funk when don't celebrate or you're really that addicted to something. And so
Yeah.
the daily habits were into the miracle morning. It was making sure I was spending time with family, making sure it was real estate or I was doing my job and really trying to eliminate everything else. And I certainly struggled with that on making everything a priority of what truly is the number one of the day, because it can kind of get jostled up. But if that's waking up early, if that's spending extra time, and then really having the flexibility at work or kind of seeing some of the fruits pay off in real estate to get some time back was huge.
Oh, I want to go back to something you said earlier. I love that. I love how you narrowed it down to just three hats because sometimes I lose sight of that because like right now, we're the weather's pretty nice. It's not too cold. It's never too cold in Florida, I don't think. Um, but we've been taking these breaks and just saying, all right, the whole family, let's go outside and we'll run around for maybe 30 minutes. And before I was like, I don't have time to do that. I've got so much to do. My wife would poke fun at me. Yeah, you're so busy, you know. And I'm like, I kind of am. I don't think you understand, but I'm not so busy to take 30 minutes and go run around in the yard and come back in breathing heavy and hence the 75 hard. That's why we're doing that. Uh, but you said something earlier about you had a 10-year plan and you were not going to exit the W2 world in 2020 until 2029. So let me get this straight. You started investing in 2019.
So I didn't start till 2017, and so I think my number should have been 2027 when I officially
Gotcha.
started, because that's when we started to scale. And it's like, okay, if you can get two properties a year every year for 10 years, almost like the millionaire real estate investor
Yeah.
suggests, it's like, okay, I think this is doable in 10 years. I think we can get two properties. And then it was like one the first year, six the next year, and then like 12 the next year. How it just kind of took off.
So does that mean you're going to do 24 next year? It's two a month.
Uh, You know what? That's a great goal. As we get into the year, have to figure out what that means.
Exactly. All right. So, and
Yeah.
your investing style is a little different than mine, meaning that you're not as conservative as I am. And I've learned from you. I feel like I've loosened up because of some of the things that you have said. And the point I want to make is whether you're conservative like myself and take 6 or 7 years to extend and get out of the W2 world, or you're like Adam, you're a little bit more aggressive and you take 2.5 years, we'll call it 3 for easy math. There is a time window for you to get past. So just anyway, just wanted to bring that up. I think it's very interesting.
I really liked your timeline. So I asked who made your timeline graphic
Yeah.
because I went through it and kind of paired up. Okay, when did things really start clicking? Okay, I started reading more. I started getting in, investing in myself, getting in, multiple masterminds. And lo and behold, look what happened over the last 3 years when I first started joining masterminds and have been in some for 3 years, some 2 years, one year on what it can look like when you have other people kind of like, oh, don't do that. That's stupid. And plus the fact that I had a business partner. And so I think leveraging not only the bank, other people's money, but leveraging just your own personal network was absolutely huge into what we're doing. And who knows, 2021, we might completely flop and I'll be back at engineering, but so far, so good.
I don't think that's going to happen. It's funny that, so the timeline you're talking about, you can find it if you go to w2capitalist.com. I don't think there is the direct link, but I don't know it. So there's a start here button at the very top of the landing page. You can see that. That's what Adam's talking about. All right, so let's get on to question number 2. This is from Maria Lee, and we may have to read into this a little bit because it's unclear to me. Maybe it may make better sense to you. What are your systems and processes per deal? And then it goes on to ask per deal or per year. All right. So this next question, Adam, is from Maria Lee. There's some things missing, I think, in it, but I grabbed it the way she asked word for word, and it was a late submission. So I didn't get a chance to ask her for some clarity. But she asked, what are your systems and processes per deal / per year?
Systems and processes. This is on the 2021 docket to probably create better systems and processes, because right now, I think with every entrepreneur, it's just whatever you do in your head. And as we started to grow, yes, the website we created to help filter out, educate people so we weren't on the phone all the time. And the number one thing that I'm always trying to protect is my time. And if you can do what Perry Marshall calls, which is the rack the shotgun, he tells this story of he's in a nightclub and under the table he racks a shotgun, and only 10% of the people turn their head and look around. And he goes, those are the people you don't want to get in a fight with because they know exactly what a gun sounds like. It's the other 9 that you can win in because they have no idea what it even sounds like. And so for our marketing or for our processes, we kind of use that rack the shotgun approach where we're really filtering out a lot of unnecessary tasks, because you can do so much movement without any progress that I find myself just constantly running in circles. And all of a sudden you're like, well, we're no better than where we were. Yeah. So sometimes just progress over perfection and not trying to spin in it. So really the thing is, yes, we have a niche, but we still try enough different things to stay curious, but we do not, absolutely, fall prey to, picking up the phone call and talking to every single person that tries to get to us. We really try to automate, delegate, or eliminate if we can. And if none of those can happen, then it falls on us. But I'm sure we could do a much better job of hiring out or automating even more. And so I'm by no means a systems expert, but that's a little bit behind what we do.
I agree with you. I love that automate, delegate, or eliminate. Did you come up with that? I feel like I've heard that before though somewhere.
Yeah, there was a
might have been from you. That's what
I stole it from a TED talk where he drew like a little maybe upside down funnel where he said the first thing that go into it, he goes, can we just eliminate this thing? And like probably 9 out of 10 things you can literally just ignore, and you know what? Life will be just fine. And I think a lot of us tend to just, myself included, like when I get a text, it's like, oh, I got to respond. I got to do something to it. Like, nope. How many times if you just didn't respond to an email, all of a sudden the person says, oh, never mind, I found it. And you're like, oh, great. The problem just solved itself. And so you're not this firefighter trying to rescue everyone else's problems. You just, hey, I'm going to wait 24 hours, to respond to that. And then I think the next level of the funnel was delegate, that if you can push it outside of the funnel and get someone else to do it. And if you really can't do that, automate, it's the next best thing of, I think he uses the automatic bill pay where, it takes an extra hour to set up automatic bill pay, but then it saves you 5 minutes forever. And eventually you'll come out ahead. And if you can't do any of those, then you either decide if you defer or you take action. And defer is what I really like, where you're like, hey, I'm just going to snooze this for 24 hours or a week. And if it's still there, I'm going to run it through the process again to see if I should now eliminate it, delegate it, automate it. But if it makes it through again, okay, then maybe I'll take an action on it. And I really like that, his model. I forget the TED talk that it was, but that one really hit home for me.
I love that. I'm getting the top of the funnel figured out. The stuff below that I'm still tweaking and polishing, but I've been told for a while now, man, you're really hard to get a hold of. Yep.
And that could be intentional. That could be very intentional. How bad do you want it?
Yeah. It's maybe your follow-up games week. If you ever I don't ever say that, but I'm just like, there's certain things that just happen. And I'm like right now, this guy, he's we're in the same local RIA. He's trying to raise money. He posts something on that he's doing this. I raised my hand, and now he's like sent me 2 messages. The last one was, hey man, I thought you maybe I misunderstood, but I thought you were interested in investing or talking about some deals. Let me know. I'm like, all right. So if you hit me up maybe the 6th time, I will probably answer to you, because now I know you're serious instead of just kicking tires, right? Sorry, buddy. If you hear this, Nick, I apologize. But anyway, all right. So I love that. Always, I probably spend more time tweaking and testing on processes than do anything else. And I've tried to narrow it down to where my whole rule, my rule is 1's an anomaly, 2's a pattern, 3's a trend. You manage the trends, you pay attention to the patterns. And I try to do that. But then I see things like what you're talking about with automatic bill pay. And if I can set this up, then how much time is it going to save me in the future? And that's kind of bleeds over to, because, the W2 capitalist is such an infant baby, and I'm pushing and poking and doing all this other stuff, doing these tests, that it really takes away from the family, and that's kind of where that bleeds over. And I'm my wife and I were getting this they're not confrontation, they're not arguments. She knows, but she also likes to pick fun of me or poke fun at me and politely remind me. But I'm setting this up for where I don't have to be as involved in the administrative stuff. But we're getting off the topic of real estate investing.
And when you talk about generational wealth, I feel like you are one of the few individuals who truly care, understand it, and are actively trying to pursue that, which is a very, like, some people want wealth, individually. When you say multi-generational wealth, that carries, a whole nother piece of it. And so then when I kind of see members that join, the mastermind that end up staying, myself included, for a long time, where it's not just, hey, every, Tom, Dick, and Jane can come in just because they say, hey, I'm willing to pay, where you're like, no, that's not the criteria. It's you want to keep, some integrity. So I kind of equate that, to both the two things of the individuals that you're bringing in, and then 2, on the, on your multi-generational wealth. I see those kind of the same approach, where it's the long game.
It is definitely the long game, for sure. And the mastermind has encouraged me to surround myself. I created it to be around people, right, that are like-minded and whatnot. And it's grown into this thing. And a couple probably several months ago when I had Mark on the podcast, who does the bank on yourself concept. Really, it's a strategy we've, deployed now to really create that bank on yourself, or excuse me, generational wealth concept. I was like, why aren't I around people who just talk about money? Like, why am I not in a mastermind where people not only talk about real estate investing, that's one vehicle, right? But once you have the money, what do you do with it? And just conversations with him and him alone is like, all right, how do we set this up so that our kids are not just trust fund spoiled little brats, right? Like they have to be a productive member of society. And there's a whole thing that we have to go through, right, as we're building this and setting it up. It doesn't happen on day one because life's going to change between now and the event where that's all going to happen, right, at death. But it's he and I have had some conversations about it, and I'm like just blown that this is some of the stuff you can do, and this is how the Rockefellers were able to do it, and all this other stuff. So it's incredible to see.
On that piece, if I could ask you a question, like as I'm thinking about goals and as I had these individual strategies, I was sometimes torn between selfish, motivating goals and generous, like long-term fulfillment goals. And what by that I mean, I want what I want, and there's like, it's pretty hard to change that, whether they're selfish or not. Those can be some pretty strong motivators. And so for my story, I was extremely selfish in the beginning. I wanted passive income, and that was it. Like nothing more creative than that. And I think that that's fine for people to actually start somewhere. I know the famous Jim Carrey quote. He goes, "I wish everyone would become rich and famous so they realize that, that's not the end all, but everybody wants to figure it out for themselves, right? Nobody wants to just take somebody's word for it." And so I think as people are going into that, and I'm kind of curious your perspective too on being self-motivated enough and just be like, hey, Jay, it'd be really nice if my grandkids were like, hey, thanks for the, for setting me up. And now I can, become the next, Rockefeller, style thing where you're like, oh, that helps me. But at the same time, you're like, really, I do want them to be helping other people and kind of toying between those two on the motivation versus the long-term fulfillment.
Yeah. And, it's one of the things I try to impress with my kids, and they're still pretty young. The 6-year-old, he's starting to understand, hey, daddy's working. Hang on a minute.
And set your goals. Like, is it a little bit selfish and setting the motivation goals yourself? Or is it truly like, hey, you know what? I really want to do this for my, kids and for others, and how, just as being a human being, we're selfish creatures to begin with, and how you maybe combat those two.
I think there was something and I don't remember when this event happened. It may have been when the first kid was on the way or whatnot, but I no longer, I still have some selfish tendencies, but like, I don't take a whole lot to operate. My wife and I, we were joking about, living in quarantine times. Like, I've got a couple of t-shirts that I, go back and forth. I actually have on jeans today because we're about to go to this closing. Most of the time it's like sweatpants or shorts, and bless her heart, I don't have a whole lot. It doesn't take a whole lot for me to do. I drive a, how was my truck? 10-year-old truck. I don't take, I wouldn't say I'm frugal, but I definitely don't, like, I have an iPhone 7. What's the latest version's out? 12. The seat that I'm sitting in, it is a little over 15 years old. It broke the other day, so I went to Amazon and found the parts and ordered it, and for $50 I had it fixed, and so I don't, and that is one thing my wife has told me, is that, hey, you need to, like, spoil yourself every now and then. Like, you need to do something. I was like, well, it's rewarding for me to see you guys be able to do what we do, and not that's kind of my reward, right? I don't have to have all this flashy stuff, and
you get more of the helper's high.
yeah, I've never heard of it called that, but I know instantly what you mean by that, and I do, and I I don't know if it's because I've been drinking the Kool-Aid for so long or telling this story to myself for so long about building generational wealth for 300 years of generational wealth. And the closer I get to that story, the more ridiculous I see how that goal is and how far behind I am in building that. And now I'm like, okay, now shit, I gotta pour gas on this fire right now, because this not going. I'm behind the eight ball. If I look at life expectancy and longevity, we got to do some exponential growth for me to become anywhere close to that. Which, a lot of guys, when they finally get their head straight and their head put on correctly, like around the year 40, they start doing that, right?
And what's
So
fun to hear is I'm sure somebody's listening to this podcast like, oh, if I was just in Jay's shoes, I'd be done. And
oh
that's
yeah, yeah,
all I really want is X amount passive income, and that's all I would do. And which is funny
it's
because I
fine.
think
Yeah.
Jim Rohn will quote it and be like, oh, maybe that's why the good Lord sees to it that you don't get there and stop. I'm going to give that to someone else that chooses to continue to do something more with that. So when you have your big, hairy, audacious goals, like that's super inspiring where you're like, hey, this is where I'm at, but we're, for yourself, holding yourself to that high of a standard is really inspiring. Cause then it's like, okay, there really isn't an end goal here, or if there now is, it's such a
Yeah.
big one that I'm not even going to be able to achieve it, but I'm sure going to strive for it.
Yeah, I'll never. And I heard, growing up, we always had, hey, set your goals. You got your New Year's resolution, whatever. And I always heard people talk about set a goal so big that you'll never reach it. I'm like, well, that's dumb. Like that doesn't make any sense. And again, it's one of those things that kind of finally clicked for me as I get a little older, and I was like, oh no, this totally makes sense. Now I get it. You kick this thing off talking about being addicted to growth, and it is, once you realize what you can accomplish and how big you can go, then you do have this addiction kind of. I don't There's probably some chemical that our body produces that, what's oh man, I'm losing my train of thought. But the
Some
point being is
dopamine
that,
dump.
yeah, the dopamine dump, it's just it. Like, you look at where I'm at now versus where I was 5 years ago, I'm a totally different person, right? Because of it. Well, yeah, 5 years ago. And we had already started investing then, right? And my goal then at the time was, I want to buy enough real estate so that we can live rent free. We just wanted somebody to be able to pay our mortgage, right? From all the properties that we had. Well, then it got into, okay, let's take it another step. And now we're at the step of, how big can we really go? You know? Um, yeah, I used to struggle with the selfishness piece, but I don't anymore. I don't think. I don't
I
currently.
Sure. When you first started to be able to pay the rent, that's kind of where I was at, where it was like, hey, I want,
Yeah.
I need a little bit of cash flow so that, I could potentially quit the job. But that was a really almost fundamental change where I had always identified myself as an engineer. And now if
Yeah.
I'm not going to identify myself, like there's a little bit of an identity crisis of like, hey,
Yeah.
what's now the third hat? Like if I'm just doing family man real estate, like I feel like there's something else, and am I missing something else, or is it just those two, or what it looks like? So I'm a huge fan of setting goals and doing the discipline to get there.
Then that's something a lot of people don't talk about who make this jump to the other side of the W2 world, is that there, and I love how you labeled it, there is an identity crisis. I feel like at times I'm still going through that. Again, the voice of reason and my better half will remind me that we're self-employed and I don't have to work set hours, and I should be able to set my own schedule. Even my 6-year-old yesterday, I recorded a podcast and he was wanting me to play with him. He goes, but Dad, isn't it your podcast? Can't you set the time of when it's recorded? And I was like, yes, and I do, and it's right now. But yeah, there is, especially, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the W2 world, you're essentially trained to do a W2 job from the day you go to kindergarten, right? Hey, you got to be here at a certain time. You're going to be here all day. We're going to give you a lunch break. And then at the end of the day, you're going to go home and you're going to take a little bit of your work home with you. Right. So from the time you're in kindergarten until the time you enter the workforce, you're doing the same thing essentially. And it's just, for me, that was close to 35 years of being indoctrinated. That here I am 7 months past my leaving the W2 world. Now I was pushed and I am thankful for that push, but I still struggle with that. There are days where I'm like, start having these minor anxiety attacks because I think I'm not doing something that I should be doing and I haven't thought about yet. Right.
Yep. I wonder, I struggle with that as well. Like when I think about what the W2 has done or what school has done, a lot of me is like this rebellion and, want to fight against the system and be like, no, that's dumb. And then on the other hand, you're like, okay, well, knowing everything that I went through, I'm in a pretty grateful position. So did it serve its purpose? Maybe a lot of people get stuck in the rat race and that is the problem. Yeah. But when I think of myself and somebody's like, well, you're no longer a W2 capitalist, like you're going to be exiting that. But I think I think the W2 served itself as a W2 capitalist for the 10 years that it has as an engineer. Like, would have I been able to get any amount of the commercial loans, the real estate, the income to do all this stuff without a W2? Absolutely not. And so probably leveraging that to what you want to do in life. Some people leverage it to buy a bigger house, a car, trips, a second house, and that's what they're leveraging their W2. Other people are leveraging a W2 to create their own financial freedom.
Yep, absolutely. I could talk about that all. I was going to play devil's advocate there and say, but what if, what if you didn't go in the W2 world and it made you accomplish this faster?
Don't believe it.
Right. Yeah.
I could believe it.
All right, man. We got two more questions from the community here. One is from Tom Latuga. He just joined the Mastermind, which might be the quickest somebody's ever joined a Mastermind and then closed on property. He's in your virtual session, the group that you lead. So I'm a little jealous of that, by the way, that like he came in, it was like 1 week. It's like, all right, I'm closing on property and he got one under contract or close it or whatever. His question is though, what's your magic number or formula for reserves?
It's changed with time. And my perfect answer in an ideal world, it is access to capital without paying interest on it. And, whether that's the bank on yourself, whether that's a HELOC, whether that's a private money lender, I like to have leveraged my own capital as much as I can. And if something goes wrong, I want the access to it without having to pay for it. And so that to me is a great sweet spot. Now, if you have, multi-million dollars of real estate, you're like, okay, I should probably have 6 months reserve. If you're just starting out, you want to make sure that a water heater doesn't, bankrupt you and you can't make the mortgage or whatever. But to me, I really like that formula of, okay, look at maybe it's 3 months or 6 months. Can I just get quick access to that by pulling a HELOC at 4%? And that just floats me during emergencies, but I'm not constantly paying, a private money loan at 10% just to have that safety net.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adam. Cash of some for savings, bank on yourself. I typically have for all of our the multifamilies, like you're talking about, the big guys, the banks are going to ensure that you have those reserves in their bank so they can keep an eye on them. And keep an eye, it just helps them keep an eye on the asset a little bit better. But for our single families, we typically cap off at 6 months of our operating expenses. So, we'll do the whole trim VC, which is my way of calculating cash flow and all those expenses, times it by monthly expenses, times it by 6. That's our number. That's where we cap ours off. And then I've got one last question here. See if we got time to get to it. I know you got to go. What do evictions and foreclosures look like on your part? You ever had to do eviction or foreclosure?
We've done multiple evictions, no foreclosure. So on our part, that's a really good question because we're buying homes for people and selling it to them on lease options or contract for deeds. Have had to evict someone on our lease options, and that was the very first one we did. because we just thought that we could buy a property, fix it up, and list it at whatever we want, and that we wouldn't screen anyone. We didn't use like the screening process. So it was like all the things not to do. And that could have just been a rental, as opposed to a lease option. But a lease option in most states is an eviction, and a contract for deed is arguably either an eviction or foreclosure. But because title doesn't change, you can sometimes get away with it. Now, depending on which state you're in, sometimes a foreclosure is actually easier than an eviction, believe it or not. So like in North Dakota, foreclosure is a minimum of 6 months to have them rectify the payments. Whereas in Minnesota, it's something like they have 6 weeks and they're gone, which can be even faster than the moratorium on, evictions getting out.
Yeah.
And so I know a couple of people that are like, I'm only doing contract for deeds in Minnesota and only lease options in North Dakota. And there's different tax benefits with it too. But luckily have never had to foreclose on someone. And the only eviction we've ever had to do was on our very first one that we didn't actually put through any screening. And they played the faith card. They played that we were saving them. Turns out that they just got evicted from their last place. And what a great lesson to learn on, no matter what someone's story is, always verify.
Yeah. Trust but verify. Always do a background check if you're managing these properties yourself. Great stuff, Adam. I know you got to go, buddy. Where can people find out more about you and what you got going on with Set Your Rent?
Sure. The easiest way is just go to setyourrent.com. You can send us an email at homes@setyourrent.com. Otherwise, feel free to, I think on there, we even have like our cell number on there if you want to drop a line or send us an email, and we're also on Facebook and YouTube.
Awesome. So, and you also lead the single family buy and hold virtual session for the Mastermind, for the W2 Capitalist Mastermind. And if folks are interested in learning more about that and connecting with Adam that way, you can go to w2capitalist.com/events, and you can see when all those calls happen throughout the month. We've got over like 20 calls now, which is freaking incredible. So
I'm excited as well, because not only is Tom about to, getting his next property, but we got maybe another one or two in there that might get another deal under contract. So if you're looking at kind of getting the next one, whether that's, my call or some of the other other niche calls, great group of individuals.
Absolutely. And the last question, I don't think I mentioned this, but it came from a Mastermind member, Brody Hough Oakes, which thank you, Brody. Appreciate that, buddy. Adam, thank you, sir. I will talk to you again very soon. I hope you have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if I don't see you before then.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy.
Have safe with your family.
We'll see you.
Take care.
All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Adam. I don't know what I'm doing with my arms right now, but here's what I recommend as next steps. Let me know. Let Ab and I both know in the comments what you thought about today's interview, right? What resonated with you? What do you agree with? What you didn't agree with? Leave us the comments below. And if this is your first time discovering the W2 Capitalist and you don't know exactly what we're all about, I've got a playlist for you right here of the first 5 videos. They're very, very short. First 5 videos that I want you to watch, and I want to see you in those next.